Welcome. My name is Brielle Gallo, and I'm the Program Director of Berkshire Art Center. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's Artist Talk with this summer's Artist in Residence at the Red Lion Inn, Noah Beauregard. So to start, I'd first like to thank the Stockbridge Cultural Council for sponsoring this year's residency, and also tell you a bit more about Berkshire Art Center. So BAC is a nonprofit community art center originally based in Stockbridge with a second location that opened last fall on North Street in Pittsfield. Our mission is to provide hands-on experiences in the visual arts to all people by offering a variety of classes and workshops, as well as artistic events like exhibits and artist talks like tonight's. So for more information about upcoming classes and events, you can go to our website, berkshireartcenter.org. Before I introduce Noah, I just have a few housekeeping notes for tonight. Please ensure that you're muted while Noah is presenting or whenever you have background noise. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. So if you'd like to ask a question and you think of it throughout the talk, you're welcome to put that into the chat during the presentation, anytime during the Q&A itself for it to be read aloud, or you can write your name in the chat so that you can be called on to ask your question or just raise your hand. And we're happy to take questions any of those ways. And as I mentioned, we are recording tonight's presentation. So now I'd like to give you a little bit more information about tonight's artist, Noah Beauregard, as I welcome him to our virtual stage. Tonight, Noah will be reviewing his upcoming show at the Red Lion Inn and discussing his on-site experience and inspiration. Born and raised in the Berkshire Hills, Noah's perspective is that the Red Lion Inn is the perfect location for his modern take on the classic fauvism style. And I'm so excited for him to dive into that this evening with us. So thank you, Noah. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I'm Noah Beauregard, and I'm here painting. Just wanted to say, really appreciate just being here. I'm so grateful that the Berkshire Art Center and the Red Lion Inn saw something in me and had me here for this residency. It's been amazing. So a little about me. I was born and raised in Pittsfield, which is a stone's throw away. And I don't have a formal art training. Everything's been self-taught. But I didn't really grow up in an artsy family. I kind of took inspiration from my aunt growing up. She was sort of the same self-taught artist. She had these really beautiful abstract Picasso-esque pieces that were really filled with color. So when I got to see those as a kid, it was pretty breathtaking. And I just kind of took to it. Yeah, as far as teachers go, one of my old high school teachers, he was an art teacher, and still keep in contact with him. And he's been giving me a lot of tips and things like that as far as how my art should go. So figured tonight might start with my title piece. This is called Nocturne. The reason I kind of chose this to be my title piece, I get out of work sometime around 5 p.m. every night, and then I would come up here to the Lion, and then by that point everything would be so dark, covered in moonlight. But yeah, so we'll get back to that in a second. Oh, actually, I wanted to talk first about my experience here on site at the Red Lion. So, like I said, I mostly stop in here during the evenings and weekends also. It's an incredibly beautiful place. I mean, I live 20 minutes away from here, so being able to walk these sites, there's a really rich history here that I think is kind of unappreciated unless you live here. So there's this kind of funny thing, actually. If you're from here, you know Arlo Guthrie. Everyone probably knows him. But he used to talk about how in certain places of the world where things happened, people like to travel there because there's a sort of energy that when you walk there, you can almost feel it. And when people go and visit, they leave little bits of themselves there. And this place definitely has that. I mean, when I walk through the halls here, that's exactly what I feel. I mean, these are the same halls that some of the greats, Norman Rockwell has walked in. I try to put that in my pieces. So, but yeah, back to this guy, Nocturne. Uh, with everything kind of happening at night while I'm painting and just feeling exhausted, I felt it was really appropriate to have pretty dark but saturated colors. So that was a conscious choice. Um, all of these paintings that I'm going to run through tonight, uh, they generally start in the same way with a base image, and as I'm painting, sort of get lost and backtrack, scrape things over, and have no idea what the final result is going to look like. And that's kind of the fun part about painting, or at least my process. Everything I do for my paintings, they all start in relatively the same way. I stretch my own canvas, and I like the look of raw canvas over primed canvas. I was looking at a lot of Van Gogh paintings, and that was something that he always did, sort of paint on these raw canvases, and the rough texture pulls through the paint as the paint absorbs. And when you get to see a painting in person, it's a really fun thing to look at. So that was something I always experiment with. On top of that, I work mostly with acrylic, oil, and oil pastel, sort of in that order. When I work with acrylics, I like everything to have a sort of wash or a glaze to it. So I'll start my paintings with a rough outline of what I want the base image to be, and then just let wash after wash go over until something starts to pop through. And it's all really random. I would like to say that I could control the paint at that stage, but it just sort of drips and goes wherever. So I would like to take credit for that, but I cannot. So when you see these paintings in person, you'll be able to look closely and see little bits of those pulling through. And then after that portion, I like to cut out my main image using a really bold color, and then just keep working over and over until I find something that I like. Hopefully that makes sense. Also, one fun thing, if you're unfamiliar with oil pastel, they were created for Picasso because he wanted that sort of immediate touch, that sort of immediacy with oil paint. And it's almost like drawing with a crayon. And the old brand Sennelier makes these really beautiful, deeply saturated colors. And that's what I generally prefer to use. Yeah, so this is Nocturne. He is just sort of a person strolling through the night. There's no, at least for me, I like to not have any sort of particular meaning with my paintings. I like them to be open-ended. So it's kind of like a timeless thing for me. If something is a little too specific, it almost feels like lecturing to me, or like a sermon. And growing up, my mom used to take me to church all the time. It's not fun to sit be lectured for an hour. But yeah, so all of these, I like there to be like a sort of ambiguity to them. Anybody could look at it and find different meaning in them. for me, when I look at this guy, I just think about coming here late at night, kind of exhausted, but just coming here to do my work. Uh, but it could be anything. It could be a traveler. It could be a friend leaving a house. It's really up to you. So, uh, let's see. We'll show you a couple more paintings, and by all means, I mean, for you, Brielle, feel free to ask a question. I generally work best in a conversation piece, so hopefully I'm not rambling on. Uh, but yeah, let me show you another painting that we've been working on. So this painting, hopefully you guys can see that. This was originally part of my submission. However, it looked vastly different. I don't have a title for it as of yet. But the reason I kept it in the show was every night I would walk up the back set of stairs to the Lion and up to my studio on the second floor. And right out on the little porch overhang, there's this little chair that has the same sort of slits and gives me the same sort of feel as this painting did. So I ended up changing this to a night scene to kind of reflect the overall mood of the show. But I couldn't stop thinking about the chair. So I actually went home, grabbed this painting, strapped it to the roof of my car, and took it up here because I just thought it had to be in. And it works. And it's kind of funny. I mean, I would see people sitting out during the day when I would come here on the weekends, and a lot of different conversations were had in that chair. But I thought it was a cool centerpiece. All of these different people from all around. I mean, people travel from all over the world just to come here, and then they sit in this one little chair and have these beautiful conversations. Some not so beautiful. There are a couple couple fighting at like 2 a.m. out there. So yeah. One thing that you'll see in all of my work, also, it's just made me think of it. I try to abstract plants. So when you look at something, you might see a dominant figure that's really recognizable, and then everything around that figure also looks recognizable. But when you start to dissect it, the lines or colors don't really make sense. So nothing in this world is going to be ever as vibrant, and the lines and shapes and the flowers are just sort of broad gestures of what a flower might be. So from a distance, your eye will recognize that as, oh, this is definitely a plant. And then you get up close and you might just see a bunch of squiggles. So it's one of the cool techniques I think that some of the older painters used to incorporate. There's this really interesting thing. Painting for a very long time was needed to be, I guess, picture perfect realism was maybe the best way to describe it. And then when cameras came out, people tried to do things that cameras couldn't do, and that's sort of where fauvism and other forms of abstraction came into play. And now we have a really interesting movement going on where AI is sort of taking over the art world, and as an artist, we're just trying to keep up with AI and do something that it might never be able to do. So laying on these really thick colors is something that you'd have to see in person, and hopefully won't ever be taken away by technology, but we will see. Yeah. Fair enough. We'll keep running through. Hopefully you can see him okay. Uh, so this was also originally part of my submission for the show. Uh, and I changed and reworked quite a few things for this piece. This is originally taken from a photo of a child in Sierra Leone, Africa. And why I kept it in this show, even though it's around the world, completely different part, it still looks like a home piece to me, something that I could go to any lake and see. It just has these sort of soft rolling hills in the background, and on my way up my drive here, every day up to the studio, this is something that I would see all the time. And yeah, it felt like it really belonged to be belonged with the rest of these paintings. Excuse me. Also, he's one of my my better portraits, so I needed to keep him in. All right. Here are two pieces. These two pieces were the beginning of my plant and floral series that I was doing for this show. One of the important reasons I wanted to do some sort of floral series in this, just below me, actually, I think directly below me, below the studio here is a little shop called Township 4. If you're unfamiliar with them, they are these two, they're husband and husband couple, and they run this beautiful florist shop. And they actually, years ago, my wife found their original shop on North Street, and she's been a patron ever since, and she absolutely loves them. And we would go and we would talk, and she would spend all of her money on flowers and plants, and then kill them, and then get a paycheck, and then spend more money on plants. And in a really long roundabout way, we sort of made friends with Jed and Nathan, the two owners. And just this past year, my wife and I got married, and they did our floral arrangements. And we cannot afford their prices, but because of Kaylee and their long relationship, thank God they helped us out. So all of my plants here took inspiration from their shop downstairs, and they're literally 2 feet below me. So it's kind of funny, and it's one of those things when I took this residency, or was given this residency, I should say. I didn't really have a full understanding or thought process of what I was going to make. And then when I got here, everything just started sort of pouring out naturally. It was just small little pieces that were coming together. And they were a big part of that. Just being able to see them on site, and then also being in this historic building. So something you might notice about these two pieces is something I sort of took from Van Gogh in some of his florals. He wouldn't include shadows, and I thought that was a really interesting way to keep an image kind of flat, uh, while also on the surface of the pots, giving them a sort of three-dimensional shape. So it really stands out from the background. Also, it's probably hard to tell online, but there's a lot of small color that pops through on the bottom. So it's a layering process that I love to use. And what I like about that is as I'm painting, no mark is ever final. So you'll see like little wisps of green or pink or underpainting popping through. So, and up here, it might only look a little lighter on canvas or on camera, but that's some of the raw stained canvas poking through. So again, part of the that layering process. I also feel like paintings should be seen in person. It's really tough to see them online. So unfortunately, that's how we do most things nowadays, which is one of the brilliant things also about being an artist in this generation. The internet has given us access to way more opportunities than we ever could have had years and years ago. It also creates a lot of competition or friends, I guess. For these two pieces also, I wanted to create a really hard, decisive line between the sort of foreground and background. Something else I kind of also stole from the older painters. But yeah, when I look at these two, I don't exactly know what type of plant the top plant is. Downstairs, they have so many wild plants that it blows my mind. I need someone to like guide me through their store. But one of those plants, it almost looked like an aloe plant or something, but each little leaf coming off of it had its own sort of unique shape and color, and that was something I wanted to portray in this guy. So, we'll carry out. So here are a couple more floral pieces that sort of follow the same inspiration as the previous two. In this guy, the lower piece, something that I did that sort of stuck. I made a wrong move painting and accidentally splattered a whole bunch of paint. And when I did that, it ended up looking like a water spill almost. So that's one of those that you just kind of keep rolling with it, and eventually it turned out to be this piece. But yeah, one thing that I also wanted to do with this to sort of differentiate it. Most of my colors you'll see are really deep saturated blues and pinks, and this is almost like a sort of muted acidy yellow, and I did that to kind of break up the eye when you'll see them in person. It'll just be a little easier on the eye as you're going from bright painting to bright painting. Also, there is a sort of bit of an inside joke with this one. my wife and I are Shrek fans, or we used to watch it when we were dating, and that was always one of the small jokes, the blue flower, red thorn. So I found a set of flowers down in the shop that looked precisely like this. Also, walking around the lion, there's a lot of, I forget what they're called, hydrangeas, but similar looking flowers, and it just sort of fit really well. This upper piece I painted for my wife, actually. Let's see. So she had a great grandfather, and his nickname was Poppy. So her entire life, she always called out to him, Poppy, Poppy. And unfortunately, he's since passed, but she even went so far as to get poppies tattooed on her, and it's one of her favorite flowers. So when I was thinking of what type of florals I should paint, this was one of the first things that popped up in my head was I have to do something for that. And at first glance, they almost look like roses. Also, now that I'm looking at it, but being bunched up in smaller chunks, sort of breaks up these larger sections. And yeah, that one was for her though. Let's see. We'll keep moving on for you. All righty. So these two pieces behind me, very different when it comes to tone and texture. The bottom piece I painted earlier on, and I left all of the original sort of drips and in paint that initially went down when, because I don't prime my canvas, that was just the initial marks that went down, the initial glazes. And then in the upper portion of the painting, that's where everything was laid on a lot thicker. But cutting through the two is a tiny little snake, if you can see him. And one of the reasons I put him in, way back in the day when I was a kid, I used to have a tiny little snake, not too dissimilar from this guy. His name was Marvin, after the window company, if you know them. And he ended up somehow escaping from his cage and slithered off to our next door neighbor's house and managed to live in their basement for the summer. Yeah, they were not happy with us, but that's sort of what that piece was about. Him just sort of sneaking off. This upper piece is a piece for my old art teacher. So the flower, again, was something stolen from Van Gogh, classic icon. He's where I draw a lot of painterly inspiration from. So if you can see it properly, this vase that the flower is in is non-functional. It's a spiral that my old art teacher he makes, and that's sort of his main body of work right now, are these really, they're the way he cuts them after he's done forming the actual vase itself, and then hangs them out to dry. They create this spring-like effect. And when they dry, they even do spring a tiny bit. Clay is a whole other medium I don't know if I could ever get into. But so it was sort of an homage to him and his daughter. And one of the interesting things about this, when I was painting it, that I was thinking about, whenever we put flowers in vases, they're always going to die, some sooner than others. And then the idea of this non-functional vase holding something that inevitably is going to shrivel up, I thought that was kind of an interesting, I guess, comparison or duality. But yeah, neither of them are going to spot. Yeah, so these are these two pieces. I feel like I should have asked, but I hope you're okay with some nudity. Not myself, but this woman that I painted, she's taken on several renditions. For a while, I basically only painted people nude, male, female, doesn't matter. And someone would, mostly my parents, could walk into the area where I was painting, and they would always make fun of me, tell me to cover them up. But I was taking a lot of inspiration from older classical paintings, and the pose of this woman just kind of reminded me of kind of like a Greek goddess statue. Yeah. But in this painting, so even though I began painting this maybe a couple of years ago, I only finished her 3 days ago, something like that. So one of the things I was trying to do with this, and you might be able to see it in some of the other landscape pieces that I have, this one definitely more so, is divide up the sky portion. To me, they're both equally night scenes, both left and right half. But I just wanted to create some sort of division, I guess. Casting shadows down onto her, and she's almost eating these giant pile of oranges. Yeah, it's funny. You know, the more you look at a painting, the more you start to realize things about yourself well after you've painted it. So I have no idea what she's gonna tell me about myself, but hopefully we'll figure it out. So just last night, or well, yesterday, I got to talk with Lucy, and when she saw these, they were all, I believe, just blank. So I'm painting also on the smaller end. These, they started out as watercolors and are also developing into just a small series of layered paintings. Here, we'll start with these first. So these were painted just last night, and they, we'll just show you first, if you can see. I wanted to create two mini series here. Are you able to see that okay? Or you might just show it up. So this was one of the trees that, as you walk into the building of the Red Lion, it's right in between the building and the main pool area. And it has this really neat kind of branch structure that's almost creeping out over a little platform. And I always thought that was really interesting because I see this tree mostly at night, but on the weekends when I would come here, people will just walk past it like it's just another tree, but it's something that's been here forever. And it just has this really unique characteristic. So these are all unfinished at the moment, but I wanted to create slight variations on a theme. So one of the things I decided to do was to take out any sort of garden or building imagery. So it was just the thing itself. And I think we're kind of capturing that. But in this, over to the right would be where you would enter into the building. And that's sort of the main thing people generally focus on when they get here. There's the door we need to go through. That's how we get to the room. And instead, I wanted the eye mostly to just focus on the tree, the thing itself. So, yeah. And this is this little series. Hopefully, we'll finish them either tonight or tomorrow. I'm not sure, but fingers crossed. And then the last. Oh, I have two more things I'll show you. So, this is the other thing. It's a small series also. Also unfinished, but just another small layering process. It's this monkey sitting on a branch. It feels a little silly, but one of the things I kept thinking about while I was here, there's a short story by Haruki Murakami, if you're familiar with him. It's called Confessions of a Shinagawa Monkey, where this traveler who just sort of wandering late at night stumbles into a really old inn, and he finds this monkey there that he's just working as sort of like a bellhop, and he starts talking to the monkey, and he realizes that the monkey was raised by humans and sort of ostracized by his monkey community, I guess you could say. And since he doesn't really fit into the human or the monkey world, he developed this weird knack where he could steal the names of people he loved. So since he was all alone, he would use the little bits of them to sort of keep warm through the night. And I just kept thinking about that weird little monkey while I was kind of painting here. So it just sort of gives me the same type of vibe that he could walk through the hall at any minute. But so what he would do is he would steal some form of identification as long as he knew the person's name. So one of the pieces one of the things I'm gonna add to these three little guys are some of the purses that I've seen just laying around here at the end. I thought that might be a nice touch. I mean, these people, like I said, they come from all over, and they just leave sometimes things hanging over the edge of a chair, and they never know if a little guy is going to come and swipe them. So the we're all right on time, right? We have a few minutes. So the last painting I was going to show you that I've been working on is my largest piece. So hopefully we can get them in camera. Yeah, that sort of works, right? Beautiful. So this piece, if you can't tell, basically it's a man playing guitar atop a horse, atop a boat. And if you're familiar with the folk singer Lyle Lovett, this actually is a little homage to him. It comes from his song "If I Had a Boat," which, if you're unaware, is pretty much about a ranch hand that decides he's fed up with his boss and he's going to buy a boat and quit his job and take to the sea. So it was always a really funny image in my head because one of the lines in the song is, "If I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat." And as a little kid raised on folk music, I kind of really wanted one of those. So I decided just to paint it. And the weird part about this painting, it's slightly unfinished, but I was working on this painting late at night. It was, I don't know, 9-10 o'clock at night. I went down to the bar below and had a drink, and then came back up here and kept working on it. And then the next morning I came back here and someone from the bar told me that Lyle Lovett had played a private show downstairs. So I'm up here working on this piece based on him, and he's downstairs, and I completely missed him. So never got to meet the guy. Yeah, I know, right? I felt the same exact way. So, yep. But this was took inspiration from him. The boat itself, that's something I've been playing with. It was another motif in some of my other paintings. We'll show you. Back to this guy, if you can see clearly, there's a few folks also riding in like this sort of long boat or canoe. So it was another piece that kind of connected to that. But one of my favorite modern painters is a man named Peter Doig, and that was something that he had played with, these sort of really long stretching canoes or boats that took up the frame end to end, and I wanted to play around with that and give these sort of varying, almost sun-dyed colors, like the boat's been out there for a really long time. But yeah, so this is essentially my entire show. Hopefully you enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Noah.
Yeah.
It's been really nice to see all of the work and hear about your experience at the Red Lion Inn. And we do have a couple minutes, so I would love to take some questions. And actually, if it's okay, I'll kick it off with the question that I have. So in like the very beginning of the talk, you mentioned something about initially working in acrylic and how the mark making process is kind of like free form and random, and how you feel like you can't take credit for a lot of the things that are happening, and that it's sort of happening as it happens. I'm wondering, like, if you could elaborate a little bit more on your process, and sort of a two-part question. The first is like, composition wise and just where the piece is going, how much of an idea do you have from the very beginning, and how much of a plan do you have? And then also, how do you layer all the different mediums that you use? You mentioned oil pastel, acrylic, watercolor. Do you have a plan for that? How do you make them all work together?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. So as far as a plan goes for starting the painting, I'll keep an initial piece in mind. So let's see, this is a good example for this guy. The only thing that I had planned was the man and the horse. I knew I wanted him to be exactly here and exactly this size. So initially I'll spend a long time just looking at the size and shape of the frame, and just sort of place whatever I want where I want. And then everything after that is just sort of up to whatever the painting tells me. So it's a lot of creating issues and then causing or fixing those issues, and then in turn creating more issues. So one thing with this, I'll tell you, if you can see, the sky piece is really thin and washy, but over that there's these sort of thicker cuts which make the trees, if you can see that. And then over here, this green area is really lightly handled oil pastel. But down below here, I don't know if you can see the texture in this guy.
Holding it
It's
up
even,
close like that definitely helps. At least on my screen, it's really clear and I can see the detail that you're talking about really well.
yeah. So I guess that's hopefully the easiest way I can answer that is I start with an image and then there's no real plan after that, especially when it comes to color. I just try to start with something light and then build layers on top of that. And then for your second question, does that kind of answer your first question? And the second question, how I layer everything. There is a process, well, I guess not a process, a rule. They call it fat over lean, which basically just means your quickest drying paints or materials go down first, and then your slower drying on top of that. So I'll start with watercolor or acrylic, because if you've worked with those, you know they dry in like a second. And then on top of that, oil. And then over that, oil pastel. Because oil pastel, at least the ones that I use, never really dry. So like here, I'll show you. If you can see, it just kind of comes right off on your hand. So that's another, it's a bit of a pain working with these, because I'll start painting one thing and then carry the painting over to the corner and pick up another one and realize I just smudged like bright blue over the person's face. And it's like, well, okay, that sucks now. So now I have to paint their face blue. So, but yeah.
And you mentioned being untrained. So how did you start picking up random materials and start playing with them? How did you get involved with each of the different mediums that you use and without, I guess,
Yeah,
formal
so
training?
my aunt, she was the one who initially, I guess, sort of got me into art. She primarily worked with oil pastel, and I wish I had some of her work to show you. But when she was in rehab for a period of time and created, I don't know, it was like 40 or 50 works in a very short period of time. And they were these like brilliant oil pastel abstract faces, with really sort of thick, I guess, impasto, impasto technique. And that's really what sparked the interest. And I went home later that day, and I had my parents get me some oil pastels just to mess around with, and I tried to recreate one of her pieces from memory. And then that was sort of that. It was one of my first like, will you hang this on the fridge type of moments. And now this is like a larger, will someone hang this on their wall type of moment. So but that was initially how I got into it, and then it sort of faded in and out. I guess I'll say I've always been interested in making images, um, which I'll say is, uh, in my opinion, the only thing that like separates an artist from somebody else. We're not more creative or interesting or thoughtful or smart. We just have a different set of interests. So take my wife, for example. She's a physical therapist, and no offense, she can't paint for the life of her. But she has a brilliant mind when it comes to physical therapy. That's her passion. And every day she's learning new things about that subject. And it's just the same for me. So I don't know anything about physical therapy, but when it comes to painting, it's just something that piques my interest. So she was one of the real driving factors for me even applying for this residency. So I was in a really long slump for a while, and she was like, you need to paint. That's what you do to make yourself happy. So I did. I just got back up, picked up some brushes, and tried to plow through a whole bunch of work. And yeah, this has sort of helped with that.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody
Yeah, of
else
course.
have a question before I just keep going? We have about 2 minutes left, so we probably have room for another question or two.
I have a question. Hi,
Yeah.
Noah. Great talk. Have you participated in other residencies?
This is my first and only as of yet. So this was a really great both feet in the water type of experience. I've participated in other shows. I've been in a few group shows, but as far as residencies, this has been it for me. So I've talked to some other artists too, some local people who I'm friends with, and some people can go their whole lives without having like a full-on residency, and this has just been amazing to me. For you guys and the Red Lion to see whatever you saw in my work. I don't know how many other people applied to this, but I'm just happy I was chosen. They gave me enough time and space to create all of the work simultaneously. So that's another thing. When I work at home, I work in a really small section of my house, basically right next to my bed at the moment. Not for long though, hopefully, fingers crossed. And I would only be able to work on a piece at a time. So to be able to see all of these pieces be put together sort of congruently was a really great experience.
Thank you.
I'm glad it was such a good experience. It was really cool that it was your first one too.
Yeah. Is that common where people have had other residencies before, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends, but a lot of artists that like we tend to work with are doing residency, coming from different places and doing residencies. But I think this is a perfect sort of scenario for somebody, especially like yourself, who's from the Berkshires, doing this immersive residency in the Berkshires is like the best case scenario.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I mean, being here, there's so many weird little amazing like flecks of history that have happened either like in this building or in this town or just this area in general. I mean, even take Pittsfield, for example. Like there are a lot of people who bash on Pittsfield, like people who grew up there. But even like Moby Dick was written right down the street from where I live. So it's incredible. It's like one of the most famous books ever. A giant piece of history is 2 feet away from our door, and people still complain. So
yeah, you're in good company of people who all enjoy the beauty of the Berkshires.
yeah.
So thank you so much, Noah, for being here with us tonight. I'd just like to share that Noah's exhibit Nocturne opens Saturday, September 9th from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Red Lion Inn. And so we hope to see you there. Thank you for showing us all of the pieces, kind of a sneak peek digitally tonight, but I think it'll be great for people to come and see it in person too. So we're really looking forward to that. And so thanks again, everybody, for being here, and have a wonderful rest of your week.